Have you ever had cues that have been published to a library but maybe haven't found any love yet? And yet, other cues in the same library, maybe even on the same album, are getting placed. Well, today we are joined by Scott Reinwand, who's not only an award-winning composer, he is also the head of production at Warner Chappell Music. He is quite literally one of the people who make the call on which cues get placed and which cues get cut. So today we're going to be talking about all the little details that matter, from production value to being editor friendly to the little extra details we can add on our cue that can help us stand out in a crowded catalog. All that and more on today's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, where each week we talk all about the world of production and library music. My name is Dave Kropf, and not only am I a composer, I am a professor of 25 years of music, and it is so good to be with you here today, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening to the audio on the go. Just know that I appreciate you. I also appreciate our family, friends, and neighbor subscribers who are composers just like you, looking to write better music, but also find success in the sync music industry. And 52 Cues is there to help with live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, pitching to real music libraries, an amazing community, and a ton more. If you want to learn more about how you can join us, you can head over to 52cues.com or stick around, because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that a little bit later in today's episode. Speaking of later in today's episode, I'm going to be playing for you a recent trip-hop tension cue. It's called Remains to be Seen, and so you definitely want to stick around for that. But let's go ahead and jump into today's topic, because I am thrilled to be joined by Scott Reinwand, who is the head of production at Warner Chappell Production Music. I mean, if there was a Mount Rushmore of production music companies and libraries here in the U.S., then Warner Chappell would absolutely be on that mountainside. And we talk everything about his own journey into production music. We talk about the evolution of production music. Yes, we talk about AI. We talk about library trends, submission and networking advice, and some big takeaways about how you can stand out in a crowded scene. So without further ado, here's my recent conversation with Scott Reinwand. My guest today on the podcast is Emmy and Mark Award-winning composer Scott Reinwand, whose music has been heard on just about every network you've ever heard of, whether it was ABC, NBC, Fox, ESPN, Discovery, Univision, you name it, as well as countless ad campaigns and sports broadcasts around the world. But these days, Scott can be found as the head of production at Warner Chappell Production Music. Yes, that Warner Chappell. And there he manages the creative direction, budget, and production of all of the catalogs, as well as any of their custom product. Now, he has a background that bridges composition, business, production, education. He was even a professor teaching film scoring at Brigham Young University. Scott, it is such a pleasure to have you with us here today on the 52 Cues podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm well, thank you. That was quite the intro. I was like, is he talking about me?
Yes. I'm absolutely talking about you. Really appreciate you taking time out of what I'm sure is a very, very busy time. Personally, just got back from the Production Music Conference as I am recording this. It's always such an electric atmosphere to it reminds me of when you're in high school and you're the one band nerd, or you're like super serious about it. And you're like, okay, nobody else is into this as me. But then you go to college and then you realize that everybody in school is the band nerd from their own school. That's what PMC felt like.
Yeah. And so, they're all the band nerds and they're all really good at their instruments. They're all first chairs.
Yep. Exactly right. Exactly right. But again, appreciate you spending time with me today. And I just want to start at the beginning. Everybody has a different path to this industry. If there's anything that I've learned in teaching production music and coaching folks and all of that, is that there's no like one quote unquote right way to do it. So what was your path into the production music space?
You want to start at the very, very beginning?
Hey,
Um,
you sound like a fellow band nerd in spirit. So maybe.
well, definitely the band nerding part and all of that. But I started young in a what I would consider maybe a non-musical family, but had music in our roots. I mean, my grandma sang in like the Tabernacle Choir in Salt Lake City, and on the other side, my great grandparents owned a dance hall and ran a dance band in like Browning, Montana. And I mean, it's like there's some crazy stuff, but that's the beginning because my great grandparents had this piano shipped out from the East Coast to Montana, and it came in a wagon and the dance hall, and that got passed down through the family till I was like an 8-year-old kid who, according to the legend, threw myself on the coffee table and cried that I wanted piano lessons and wanted to learn to play an instrument. I started taking piano lessons from like age 8 to 10, and then I quit. I was out. I was like, well, that's enough for me. I got more interested in sports and other stuff. But in the meantime, I started playing trumpet in band, ended up playing trumpet all the way through high school. Also started playing percussion in high school, doing drumline. Since I could play the piano pretty well at that point, I was also doing, I was the only guy that could do the
Yep.
mallet.
Yeah, you were the mallet. You were the mallet. I was timpani kid. You were mallet kid. Yep. You were the mallet
Oh,
guy.
I loved timpanis. There's nothing more bombastic and fun. But when I was 14, a friend and we pitched in our birthday money and we went and bought a Porta Studio, a little 4-track, and started recording. From my band director in high school, I bought a Juno 60, a Roland Juno.
Mm.
He sold it to me for $30. And they're just, who needs this analog garbage, right? So it was one of those sort of things. So I went and asked my mom, hey, can I get $30? And we started writing songs on this thing.
Oh,
And
man.
that was the genesis of like recording and songwriting and getting into it. Played in several bands through high school and into college. Got a music degree from BYU. You have to have an instrument, as you're going through to get a music degree. I went into basically to apply for the music program and was going to do it as a piano, like have piano be my instrument. But I, of course, was not nearly as good as these piano pedagogy kids who'd been playing since they were 2.
Yeah,
and
sight reading Chopin and
putting
that
in
kind of thing.
8 hours a day kind of thing. But a friend of mine at school was like, hey, why don't you come down to the organ department? They'd have you. So I did. So I played, 4 years of college. Took organ lessons and performed organ recitals and that sort of thing. So it's sort of an odd thing that there's still a place in my heart for organ and organ performance. But that's a whole different type of nerdy, I think. But as I was in college, just had a lot of opportunities for networking and met a few composers that were local in the area, had some internships, and through a series of introductions was eventually introduced to the guys at Nonstop Music in Salt Lake City, who were doing a lot of really major, film trailers, campaigns, theme packages. And they started hiring me to do music. I think they just didn't really have a choice. I think back then you were sort of confined because the internet wasn't a thing.
Right.
So you had to go with talent that was local. And I was definitely not ready for the big time, but they kind of came in and mentored me and showed me and taught me, got me to where I was producing at a high enough level to compete. So kind of unusual. I think, coming at it now, I think there would be very little chance of success, honestly, like trying to enter the industry where I did. But it worked out, started working for Nonstop Music, mostly doing theme packages, news and news updates, a lot of sports music. That was kind of their main shtick. And then into film trailers, and then eventually into library music, which that was sort of a side thing they were doing. But in 2007, Warner Chappell Production Music Warner Chappell bought Nonstop Music and created Warner Chappell Production Music out of Nonstop, and then a few acquisitions that came shortly after. I basically was a freelancer with them forever, and I started producing catalogs for them and doing creative direction on certain families of catalogs within Warner Chappell Production Music. And then about 5 years ago, they hired me. They decided to close down the studio in Salt Lake, which had been there 40 years or so, and open up a studio in Hollywood. So I oversaw closing down that studio in Salt Lake and opening a new one here. That was with Pat Weaver as head of production. And then just recently, in the past number of months, I took over that position when Pat retired. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some detail way back there, but
yeah, that must have been a real adjustment going from Salt Lake to Hollywood, especially, like I said, we just got back from LA, and so love that vibe and everything. But the pace of life, I imagine, would be a lot different in LA.
It is, and it isn't. I mean, we moved actually to a very rural area north of Los Angeles that's very like family centric. Gotcha. But when you're in Hollywood, it's a different vibe. But that has a lot less effect on life and quality of life versus going from being a freelancer like I was to working for a company. Gotcha. That's the big change, where you kind of no longer control all of your time, and you have to answer to someone else and stuff. That was the biggest change. It is a thing to move your family to Los Angeles for sure, but I would say the biggest effect was just time. You didn't get. I think I knew how precious it was, but now I really know.
Now you've been in the production music world since the late 90s, and you've seen a lot of change. And kind of right now, it's not nearly kind of the trade secret I think that it once was, partly because, COVID kind of blew the roof on it. And then you have people like me who are YouTubers and educators kind of teaching people about this industry. But you must have seen some stuff. What are those early years look like? Whether it's FedExing tape reels, or how has the landscape really fundamentally changed since those early days?
Yeah, I mean, delivery is completely different. So we went from actual analog physical media to all digital distribution, and that was kind of one of the big changes that happened, 2007 to 10-ish, where we really shifted over. It's where everybody started getting high-speed internet that was capable of actually pulling these things down, and they didn't need a CD in hand to kind of gather up. Before that, there was that whole other part of the industry, which was printing CDs, doing these big runs of CDs to ship out to thousands of clients. As far as production music specifically, that was a massive change, I think, for the better. For so many reasons, beyond just it's having a CD was advantageous. For one, it was like not everybody could get into the game, so it was like way less saturated. There were only so many people that could afford that kind of distribution. But it also was a thing where when a client had a release, an album they loved, it was on their shelf, and they would go to it over and over and over again. And that's totally not the case now. It's like there's a very short shelf life to projects these days. And that's been a big thing because, of course, it affects, not only does the number of tracks available affect the track return, it's just the fact that they are cycling through music so quickly makes your share of the pie much smaller.
There's also, the explosion. We're kind of living through a new golden age of music, or of television, I should say, especially with unscripted and and sports broadcasting and everything. So I would imagine that the need is greater, but you mentioned saturation. Do you feel like we are at a saturation point, whether it's the democratization of the tools and the cost of of entry into, like, as far as like library, like sample libraries and the cost of the machines versus the geographically centric, you don't have to be in a certain city. Where do you think kind of we are there in terms of saturation in the tools and the access to these tools?
It is very easy to create high quality music, and there's a lot of it. So even we're one of the big libraries with a lot of third parties and our affiliates and everything. So we deliver anywhere from, at times it can be like 120 to 140 albums a month. So that's every couple of weeks. That's you know 40 to 70 albums going out every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So when I talk about saturation, it's like it's important that people understand what I'm talking about. And is it too much music? I feel like it is sometimes.
Mm.
It's like that's a lot for people to digest, and we're dealing with clients who use a lot of music. And when you are talking about promo departments or like a larger, say, a video game company, the amount of content they put out, or say if there's like a food or beverage company and they're involved in tons of content that they're creating, that's a lot of stuff that they go through. And the issue is that you say you put out 4 epic hip hop albums, that feels like a lot. And so when they come back and they say, hey, do you have any more epic hip hop? And we're saying, well, we just gave you 4 albums a few weeks ago. And they're like, yeah, we've used them 5 times already. Those are kind of the clients we're dealing with, where they'll chew through it, but then they seem much more eager to just kind of move on and what's next, rather than use something over and over. So there's so much of our use and revenue is generated by back catalog that kind of lives in shows, content, stuff that's in syndication, that's still around, that's still
Right.
bumping around on the internet and streaming and even broadcast. So that back catalog is really important. It was important to get in early, which I think was an advantage we had, just kind of already creating library. The genesis of Warner Chappell's library was actually all the trailer music
Oh, yeah.
that we were doing early on. So there would be an exclusive license to that production company, and then after a couple of years, that would revert back to Nonstop. They kind of had the foresight to do that, and so when it would come back, then they would release these albums of this trailer music, which was all full orchestra, super high end, high budget stuff. And that stuff still today, 20, 30 years later, makes a ton of money. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's never been, from a composer's perspective, it's never been easier to jump into the industry. From a library perspective, I'm sure there's absolutely no shortage of folks who are sending you demos and sending you reels and reaching out and pitching. From an editor's perspective, it's a kid in a candy store. You have access to so many different options. So it begs the question, how does a composer kind of separate themselves to make sure that you don't just kind of get lost in the wash?
it's a great question. I mean, that's the thing. That's the difference between when I feel like I started versus guys coming in now.
Mm.
There's very little room for development, which that's the case whether you're a core artist, an artist like a Bruno Mars, or you're a production music artist. It's like you have to be your art from the get-go. You're competing with the best of the best,
Yeah.
because that's available to us. um, I will work with people to develop them if I see like a lot of talent, or there's some personal connection or something where it's like I want to bring them along. um, but other than that, it's like I said earlier, it's just about product. So it's like, is it good enough? Does it stand out? um, to me, that's the biggest way to stand out, honestly, is just production value first and foremost. And just there's a matter of taste and all these things that are kind of subjective. But production quality is number one. It's like it has to be at a very elevated level. And then I, in the old days, it used to be more important to be a lot more versatile. Like it's like I've worked on so many different styles of music, which benefited me. It's like I could kind of fake my way through 3 or 4 things. I was really good at 3 or 4 things. That was how you did it. But now it's almost all specialists. It's like that guy's your orchestral guy, or even your John Williams-ish orchestral guy, and that guy over here is your indie rock guy, and this guy does EDM, this guy does pop, these guys are Latin specialists, they do reggaeton, but this guy over here is a dembo guy. It's like I don't know that it's pigeonholing, it's just saying we expect the very best at any given genre. So if a guy shows up and says, I can do everything, it's like, we doubt that. We doubt.
Well,
but it's possible. It's just some genre in there is not going to be authentic.
Well, yeah, it's like, do you want to go to like a high-end sushi restaurant where this person has like the best tools and they've been focusing on like honing their craft, or do you want to go to like a cheesecake factory, which I'm not here to malign the fine name of the Cheesecake Factory people, but their menu is insane. Yeah. It's a selling point. It's
novel.
Right. Exactly. I do not need an advanced degree to get through your menu. And I think that also speaks to something we've talked about here, in the community and on the channel, is what's your superpower? Like, what do you love to do and what's your superpower? And when I am coaching composers like who are going to a conference and you will get asked, what do you do? Don't just say, I do it all. Because if you say I'm a jack of all trades, then the other half of that saying, master of none, right? And so that's good to hear that kind of the specialist arena is something that's kind of helping folks kind of differentiate themselves from the rest of the crowd, especially if you're going toe to toe with a composer who might live in LA and have access to, actual LA players, and they might piggyback on a session and have real strings. And I'm over here with my contact libraries trying to like kind of pitch to the same brief. I imagine that's that type of thing really matters ultimately.
Yeah, but you use what you've got, and in a lot of ways that can be helpful. I mean, early on I could afford nothing, and this was even pre software samplers and stuff. Is like you had what you had. If it was a $300 guitar, and it's like embrace kind of what you have and use it in a really unique way, that's available to everyone.
Yeah.
It's like, well, take those contact libraries and do something different. And, I remember doing all sorts of funky stuff early on just to kind of stand out and to have something sound cool. It doesn't sound that crazy now, but just like playing, it's like, well, this whole thing, I'm going to do the whole rhythm track playing like the acoustic guitar and in like an open tuning with like brushes or something.
Right.
Like, I was like, what is that? It's like, yeah, because I didn't have it wasn't something from Heaviosity that was doing it. It was like you were doing it.
Yeah.
I've still available though.
Yeah. I've played dramedy cues playing my ukulele like a Strat because I wanted that kind of Nile Rodgers vibe, but I didn't have a Strat yet. So I'm like, well, I'll just do it. I could play 4 fingers and then, I can make that happen. And it's actually gotten some love, and I've got I've as a drummer and a percussionist, I'm just a vacuum of little toys and everything. And so I've got shakers. I have you'll appreciate this because we talked about college. This is my triangle from 1992, and I still have it. It is within arm's reach because I'm going to use what I have instead of like trying to search for a multi-sample triangle library.
Yeah, look, that's a really important thing when you talk about standing out. To me, having at least one thing, if not multiple things that are recorded live, make all the difference. You want to talk about standing out? You stand out when you took the time to record that one thing. Can be even if it's bass or acoustic guitar or a little ukulele thing or live percussion or some hand claps. I mean, it's like all of that just adds a human feel to it, some air, there's something about it that instantly changes things. It's like if you're capable of doing a one note kind of a thing on a piano, but you're recording it, that's going to make your thing it's like you got a whole EDM thing with one real piano playing the top line. It's amazing. That's the thing that like differentiates you, because there's so much especially with, you talk about context, like everyone has the same tools. So there's a very kind of homogenous sound to so much music. So it's like you have to find what's that thing that suddenly elevates you. And most of the time it's the stuff like you're talking about. It's like, oh, you play the triangle. I can kind of hear that, or you have a vocal thing, or you have, there's kind of infinite ways of doing it, but adding something human and organic seems to help every time.
Yeah, and those organic inconsistencies. So if I were to hit 4 triangle notes directly in a row, they're not going to be identical. And I think humans clock those types of things, right? It's just we're used to it, which begs this question: the 800-pound gorilla in the room right now. We talked about it at PMC. It's the thing that we can't avoid. You probably know what I'm about to say. The oncoming Indiana Jones Boulder-like apocalypse of AI. How is Warner Chappell like? First of all, do you have a hard line in the sand, like no AI, or are you having to like fend off the AI submissions with a pickleball racket? I mean, how's it going over there for you
There are
guys?
a lot of submissions coming in that are AI, which we don't accept. It's AI is an impressive thing, and it gets better and better. But there are a number of hurdles that have to be cleared for it to be viable.
Mm.
One, of course, is the lawsuits that are coming from companies like ours, trying to protect the original creators that have been scraped, for these data sets. The other is just there are still some pretty severe quality issues with AI. Your first impression is always like, wow, that's amazing. But if you actually were listening as a producer and you're like, well, but the snare drum changed between verse and chorus, and then it's like now it's different, or I can't tell if that's one acoustic or six, or just kind of the fuzzy distortion to all of it.
Transient smearing and all of that.
Yeah, it's like you kind of forgive that because of the wow factor of the technology. But when you go from listening to a bunch of AI back to listening to real recorded music, that suddenly there's just this clarity and space and sort of perfection to the sound that you're like, it's like listening to a really bad MP3 and suddenly then getting this high fidelity sound.
Yeah, I listened back to some of my early like iTunes library where I was just like, yeah, 128, okay, that's fine. That works for me. And then I listened to those old MP3s now. I'm like, ugh, what was I thinking? That sounds terrible.
So that's still a hurdle. I mean, but I expect that they'll kind of sort that out. The stemming is still a thing that they can't do. They're still just using kind of a splitter, stem splitter. They're not doing like anything too smart there yet. You know what I mean? It's like, so when you pull these parts apart, they're just leaving artifacts, in all the individual stems. But then the thing that where it starts to get gray now is with like Suno Studio, where you're looking at there and they can create like an individual track, and that may just fit it within the context of stuff you have done. It's still a copyright issue. Who owns that? Who can claim ownership of that track if it wasn't human created? Who draws the line as far as the copyright rules? It's like, well, as long as it's mostly human created, like what percentage, and what about attribution on that track that was created? And so in our world, people ask, well, how is AI affecting you, as far as AI gen music? And it's not affecting us yet. But I'm certainly not naive enough to think that it won't have some effect, especially on maybe kind of lower end music where they're looking for music wallpaper, that just kind of goes behind stuff. And that's speculation, but I would think that it may affect that. But, you don't know what the future holds. It's like maybe AI is the tool that we need. It's just new technology, and we're trying to sort that out. We certainly have plenty of tracks to be able to look at things and say, well, could we create data sets from our own music? And would that be helpful to clients? I mean, it's a business,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
can't get too precious about new technology. You got to be like, well, there might be a way to move forward with this that's advantageous to everyone.
Yeah, and this, it's not really necessarily new anyway. I mean, John Philip Sousa famously hated the concept of a player piano. Artists rebuffed the idea of jukeboxes in bands. This idea isn't necessarily new. One question I have for you before we move on here is, do you hear any music supervisors or clients like asking for AI music, or is this a solution looking for a problem?
I've had one agency that showed up with an AI song they had created with their lyrics. That was interesting, but you see it all around. I mean, I see storyboards and everything else totally using AI. They mock up entire commercials now with AI, either using Sora or Veo or even just the drawings. It's like, they're kind of all in. So one would think, like I said, if those hurdles get cleared, that they could start addressing music in that way. But it's very problematic. And if you've ever done custom music and ads with an agency, the amount of revision and nuance required to like get it over the finish line is crazy. And like AI cannot do that yet. It can't ask for these small tweaks without changing the music fundamentally. It'll like swap out a whole chunk and it's like, or change the entire song.
Yeah, it'll change what you asked, but then it'll change something else over here. And like, I didn't ask you to do that, so let's go back and fix that. And then, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And even if you're working on one chunk, it's like it's recreating it and trying to match what's around it, but it will change something fundamentally about that chunk of song. So I haven't heard anyone ask for it specifically yet, and I don't know that they would need to, unless there was something that they wanted. I really think like AI seems to excel especially at the old stuff where there's inherently in the recordings, there's a certain amount of distortion, maybe a little bit of wobble to it, just an old recording. You can get away with a lot of the imperfections of AI in that style of music where you've got horns blasting or something. They can be crunchy and that's okay.
Yeah. It's a feature, not an error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's the thing that's on everyone's mind. And all I can say is that, we're still making music.
Yeah.
We're still out cranking out a lot of music constantly and trying to do it at the very highest level. So when I'm getting in AI demos, which I do get from some people as they're kind of ideating, I'm like, that's okay if you want to send me this, but you have to understand that you're now competing with that production that you're sending me, which sometimes is pretty good, especially if it's like a throwback R&B thing.
Yeah.
I expect at least that you do as well as the AI at this point. Right. So, yeah, we're trying to do stuff at a really, really high level. And to me, that has a lot of value and it's still very relevant.
Yeah. And along those same lines, you getting submissions again, I am sure that you get so many submissions. Is there a recurring error or something, if you had a platform where you could talk to thousands of composers at one time, what would you say, hey guys, like quit doing this? Or what's a mistake that you keep seeing composers make over and over?
The whole, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. It's just like, it remains true. I think everybody kind of knows if they do any amount of research, they know what we're expecting as far as that first contact of, brief email introduction, links to, a Disco or SoundCloud with a limited amount of stuff for us to listen to. There are some people who maybe didn't get the memo and they'll show up with a playlist of 40, 50 songs. And it's like, well, I got time to sort of like bounce through maybe like two, and I'll know right away whether the production is up to snuff. So it's like that helps. But even then it's like, there's no shortage of talent. You know what I mean? It's like, there are so many people that are good. A lot of it is just about timing. We talk about what's changed from when we started to now. It's just the technology has even, you fast forward through all the like creative stuff, like, plugins and sample libraries and being able to do that on a computer and the cost of all this stuff coming way down. It's just there's so much music, the ability to search for it, and doing so in a way that doesn't involve like tagging and metadata as a kind of a traditional way of searching for things in a database. Um, that's the next major evolution in library music, is finding more relevant results based on some form of artificial intelligence,
Yeah,
and that's searching using either prompts in language, or searching using pictures, or searching using video, and having the agents be able to understand what you're asking, convert that to vectors that then match to the correct vectors in the music. It's like it's such a superior way of searching, and so not it's just an objective search for something that's relevant versus like what the library catalog creator said was rock or said was sports music.
right.
This is what actually is.
Or a metadata line that was like one row off when they inputted it, or imported it
Yeah,
from their spreadsheet, and now suddenly
exactly.
everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's AI for good and not for evil. That's AI
Yeah.
that's helping everybody in the industry do their job better and faster and more efficiently, as opposed to replacing folks in the industry. And I think everybody can get behind that. Here, right before I let you go, I got a question for you that I'm sure you get all the time, because as somebody who mentors and coaches composers in the industry, I get it. So I imagine you do, and that is, what do you need, or like, what are the trends? Where do you see this going? And so if I, as a composer, I said, hey man, Scott, I hope you're doing good to shake your hand there in LA at PMC or whatever. What do you need? What is your answer to that?
I will preempt this answer by saying this answer would be different from every catalog and every library, which is completely based on timing, what we've already put out, versus client needs, which is the main driver. And we have very different clients than our competitors, and vice versa. So it's if I'm not asking for EDM, it doesn't mean that it's not relevant and something you should be making. We just might not be the right partner for you.
Yeah.
But what do we need? I always say there's just some mainstays. Knowing that production music is primarily the driver behind daytime television, this is backed up by revenue. This is backed up by performance. This is backed up by all the data that we can actually gather, backed up by search results from our website and others. And it's like this, what you always need is positive, happy, upbeat energy, driving, bright, optimistic, motivational. It's like these are all the kind of key words of music that is used like 10-1 versus almost any other style. When you're getting into specifics, there are just the styles that are always relevant. Hip hop is always there toward the top, rock is always there at the top, pop is always there at the top. The thing to understand with any of those styles is the shelf life that they might have. So it's like you may get some kind of big pops from those, but then if you're working on, say, future bass 10 years ago, that might have killed it for you for a while and then suddenly went over a cliff, and that's kind of it for future bass. Whereas if you took your time making a solo piano album that was like optimistic and had this feel to it that really worked for a lot of things, that's going to keep going and going. Could be a slow burner for you, but in the long run, maybe it was better. So that's, all of those keywords are definitely something we're always looking for. And then as far as application, it's like, formatting is promo style stuff with lots of breaks and lots of musical devices that are fun for editors. I think all library music should be pretty rich in those devices. But then there's longer format stuff that, of course, layers, as it goes. These are all, I'm hoping that they're kind of well-known,
Yeah, definitely. You're
everybody should know by now about library music, but
yeah, you're singing the song of my people here. these are drums that I've been banging on for a while. So
yeah, well, it's just, I mean, fundamentally, you want to make music that is useful not only to your clients, but specifically to the editor who is using your music. If you make their life one, easy, and two, fun, then you'll get used. That's that simple. In other words, like, think about an ending. It's like, don't get cute with like some artistic ending that fizzles out and has a lot of weird things. Like, can I take that ending and chop it off and put it on the end of my 13-second edit? Done and done.
Yep.
Same key. It landed on the downbeat. It just did what it had to do. That's easy. You know, and then there's just fun stuff. Like, you can imagine being an editor looking at something and going, I'm going to make this sports cut. And you've got all these great kind of fills and chops and stutters and neat things happening. They're going to love you for that. So, you know, it takes some effort. Like, making production music is not just cut and paste, set and forget. It's just not the way you get used.
Yeah. Especially now, with so many people having access to the tools, with so many people having access to the libraries, because I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody right now from like going to warnerchappellpm.com. I think that's the website, and hitting the submit, because you guys take unsolicited submissions. Just know that if it's a low effort production that you just banged out in a couple of hours, then you're going toe to toe with somebody who has sunk a lot of effort into it and creativity, but has also figured out the intersection of art and commerce.
Yeah, and we can hear that. And since you talked about the PMC, I think it's important not only for the PMC, but any industry, you know, event where there's networking available. Networking is still the best way in. We take all submissions. We do listen to all of our submissions, which is kind of insane, but we have a crew that takes time each week to go through and flag the ones they think are worth listening to. But it's still, I couldn't assign a, you know, number to it, but you're vastly more likely to get listened to if you're introduced by another composer who's willing to vouch for you.
Yep. If
they show up and they say, hey, I want you to take a listen. This guy who's interested in writing for the library. Here's some of his music. I will listen.
Yeah, that's because relationship, this is the way I say that I've talked about it. It's still the highest form of currency in the industry, you know, which is why we go to PMC. It's why I fly, you know, 2,000 miles from Orlando and spend an amazing week at the Hilton by the Universal Studios, and shake hands and have lunch and coffee and hang out at the bar and do all of those networking relationshipy things, so that it builds trust and it builds actual relationship. But Scott, man, thank you so much for joining me here today. It was so fantastic chatting with you. And this was, you know, we connected on LinkedIn. And so I think LinkedIn is underrated, man. I think it's getting kind of swept up in like the Facebook social media stuff. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And we'll have links to everything in the show notes that you can check out. But Scott, again, thank you so much. I hope you have a stellar rest of your day.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. It was great meeting you and being able to chat.
Once again, a huge word of thanks to Scott for joining me here on the podcast. And I mean, that's as close as you can get to getting feedback and getting information directly from the source. Here's a person who every single day listens to music and has to make the call on what to put into the catalog, what to pitch to other music supervisors or to editors. And so I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it was helpful. And again, thank you so much, Scott, for joining me. And, you know, Warner Chappell does take unsolicited submissions. So if you think you're ready, then I'm sure Scott would love to hear from you. And like I said, at the end there, we'll have links in the description. All right, so we are going to take a super quick break. And when we return, we're going to be checking out Remains to Be Seen, which is my latest trip hop tension cue. We'll be right back. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbors, subscribers of 52Qs, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly Q breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52Qs. You can just go to 52qs.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers? Then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52qs.com. So that was Remains to Be Seen, a tension, Q, investigation, true crime with trip-hop beats. For you neighbor folks, you can follow along with that because I wrote this over the last few weeks in a live stream. So if you want to see it be written from scratch, you can check out that archive. And for our family and friends subscribers, be on the lookout for a complete Q breakdown of Remains to Be Seen, where I talk about the harmonic choices, melodic choices, the instrumentation used. We'll look up some of the patches and talk form, structure, mix, and more. So be on the lookout for that. And speaking of our family and friends, folks, just want to say that it's not too late to jump into the Sync Accelerator. We've got our first brief closing on November 17th. This is for the Sync Accelerator, powered by our great friends at Real Crafter, where we are writing albums as a community, and we are going to be pitching them for possible placements in libraries. And our first brief is a cinematic synthwave brief, and it is not too late to join us, for you family and friends folks. We're going to be having a Derby-style Q review session on Monday, November 17th, starting at 4 p.m. Eastern. And this is where I will be listening to the Qs the same way a music supervisor or a potential publisher would listen to them. So you can RSVP, and you don't even have to submit anything if you want to join us. We're going to be doing it live via Zoom. But that is going to do it for me this week. I hope you've had an amazing week. And you know what? Even if you haven't, I know that next week is going to be fantastic. How do I know that? Because I trust and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2025 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community, submitting your cue for review, or becoming a member subscriber of 52 Cues, head over to 52cues.com.